What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you a first for the channel for Light and Darkness Dragon. That's right, the Light and Darkness Dragon got some brand new support. All of it was common except for one card in the form of the actual Light and Darkness Dragon Lord, which is an ultra rare. Now this one actually has a little bit of value for people who are actually playing it in Branded, and it has some very cool interactions with Branded. However, I've kind of made this a bit of a pure deck. We still use the bestials, but you don't need to absolutely have to use them. The idea of this deck is to get your Light and Darkness Dragon onto the board and then kind of utilize other cards to reset this, or just be able to utilize its effect after it's already used up all of its attack and defense stats. Now, one very important thing to note about Light and Darkness Dragon is it is mandatory to negate, so it will always activate. Sometimes that can be a blessing because it actually mandatorily chain blocks your cards, but it also mandatorily chain blocks your opponent's cards. It also negates your cards as well, so you need to be very, very careful the way you play this card, which is why we're utilizing a couple of different cards in this deck to kind of get rid of this, or kind of flip it face down, bring it face back up, and everything else in between. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With all of that out of the way, I'm going to dive headfirst into the profile, show you what we've got, and explain why we've got it. So we're going to start off with free Light End Sublation Dragon. Now this one is obviously the counterpart to the Dark End Evaporation Dragon, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But mainly what these are both going to be able to do is your Light Dragon has the ability to banish a level 8 Dragon monster from your extra deck to special summon this card from the hand, but you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn except dragons. The same kind of applies for the Dark End Evaporation Dragon as well. During your main phase, you get to fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck, using a monster from your hand or field as material. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can make this card lose exactly 500 attack and defense, and if you do, that opponent's monster loses 1500. So if you were playing a sealed sneak peek event, you'd probably see that these cards were pretty much mini MVPs. Now the Dark Dragon is a little bit more aggressive, so it will have the exact same effect: banish from the extra deck a level 8 dragon, summon itself down for free, lock yourself into dragons. It has the ability to fusion summon a fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material, and then it also has target another face-up taps your monster on your opponent's field, and then make this card lose exactly 500 attack and defense, and if you do, destroy it. You can only use each effect once per turn. But the idea is that once you get these to the board, your Light and Dark Dragon just needs a Light or Dark level 8 monster to be fusion summoned. So obviously both of these, as long as you have another attribute in the hand, will enable you to fuse this guy out very easily. Another one of the brand new cards is we play triple Knight Armed Dragon, the Armored Knight Dragon. Wow, bit of a mouthful. Now the reason you play this is if you special summon a level 5 or higher dragon monster, you get to special summon this card from the hand. If it is special summoned, you can make this card's attribute and level become the same as one of your banished dragon monsters. So obviously by the time you've got one of these out, you've already banished a light or a dark monster. So then this one becomes a light or a dark one, which you might need for the other attribute to complete your fusion summon, or it just becomes a level 8 dragon, so you can make a rank 8 very successfully and very easily. If that wasn't enough, if this card is sent to the graveyard by any means, you can target one dragon monster you control and it gains 1000 attack. Neither player can activate card or effects in response to this effect activation, so it basically allows you to turn your Light and Darkness boss dragon into a 4400 boss monster. Now unfortunately it doesn't buff its defense because it's the defense, like when this uses its effect, it has to lose 1000 attack and defense. So once it runs out of defense, which will be 3 times, that then is pretty much the game. It can't then use its negate anymore, but it still sits there as a nice little mini boss monster, even if you give it more attack. We are then playing a very small Chaos Engine. Now the reason we're playing the small Chaos Engine is because you're going to be putting Lights and Darks into your graveyard very easily, and then these are also level 8 Dark Dragons. So you've got your Chaos Dragon Legionnaire, you've got the Chaos Emperor, the Dragon of Armageddon, and then I do play the 1 Black Collapse Servant and the 1 Wyvern Buster. And the reason I'm playing these is because I'm also playing the Galactic Spiral Dragon. So for those of you unfamiliar with the Galactic Spiral Dragon, it's a common from Chaos Impact, and when this card is in the hand or graveyard, as long as you control 2 or more light or dark monsters, you get to special summon this card in defense, but banish it when it leaves the field. On top of that, during the main phase, you can make all monsters you currently control become this level until the end of this turn. So you can make them all become level 8. That then means it opens up your rank 8 plays. You've got a Light and a Dark Dragon for your fusion summon material should you need to, and then everything else from that point on kind of balances itself back out. Now it's really important, while we go back to the Legionnaire, the Chaos Emperor, the Spiral Dragons, is that we do also have another brand new spell card in the form of the Dragon, Light and Darkness. Now this is a quick play spell card that you get to activate one of the following effects, but you can only use each of the effects once per turn. So it means that if you have multiple, you can activate multiple, you just can't use the same bullet point again. So the first one is shuffle a level 8 dragon monster from your hand into the deck, and then add a level 8 dragon monster with a different attribute from your deck to the hand. So you can turn a dark into a light, or a light into a dark. Now, obviously, that means you can turn a double Bestial Lubellion into any of your dark ones. It then also means you can turn any of your dark ones into a Bestial Lubellion. So you're getting great kind of synergy with that one. The other effect is you target any dragon monster you control and it gains attack equal to its level times 200. And then when a card or effect is activated that targets a dragon monster or monsters you control, negate that effect. Because we're playing loads of level 8s, we are playing 2 trading. We're also playing the 1 Chaos Space, because the Chaos Space can actually search you out your 2 Chaos monsters, so your Legionnaire and your Chaos Emperor Dragon, but it can also search you out your Lubellion. And the reason I quite like this, and the reason that Chaos Space has a little bit more additional synergy with the deck, is when you're sending cards from your extra deck, or banishing cards from your extra deck with your Dark End of Aberration and your Sublation monster, your Chaos Space has the ability to banish it and then put it back into the extra deck, and you just draw a card for free. So it's really kind of useful in order to utilize that. You don't absolutely have to play this, but I feel that if it was at free, you probably still would do, because you can also get you access into your little light and dark dragons as well, so you pretty much get whatever you need to. Triple Bestial Lubellion followed up by the 1 Magnamut and the 1 Druid Swarm along with the 1 Regained. Now again, you need to be really careful with this deck, because the idea is you want to be using hand traps that can become chain link free or higher. And what I mean by that is, because this is a mandatory effect, the first chain link will be what your opponent activates. The second chain link will be something like Light and Darkness Dragon, as it is mandatory, which then straight away means that you start missing your timing for stuff like Ash Blossom and everything else when they are when effects. So that's when the Bestials come into play, and it's also why the rest of the hand traps come into play, as they are targeted effects, which means it doesn't matter when they happen. As long as they happen within that chain, you'll be able to target and do everything you need to. So for example, your opponent activates Chainlink 1 anything. Your mandatory effect would then be Chainlink 2 of Light and Darkness Dragon. Whether it can negate it or not, whether it has defense or not, it is still mandatory to activate, so it will always then be Chainlink 2. Now obviously you can only use it in the chain once per turn, which means it can't then become Chainlink 4, Chainlink 5, Chainlink 6 and so on. So the idea is it would go Chainlink 1 opponent, Chainlink 2 Light and Darkness, and then Chainlink 3 would be your hand trap of interruption, whether that be a Druid Swarm, whether that be a DD Crow, whether that be an Effect Veiler, or whether that be an Infinite Impermanence. Of course, you can start using all your other hand traps like Nibiru's, Ash Blossoms and everything else once this no longer has its defense stats, but like I said, in order for Ash Blossom to be relevant in that particular kind of scenario, they would have to go Chainlink 1 one thing, Chainlink 2 would be Light and Darkness Dragon, they would then need to use Chainlink 3 as another card to search anything, and then that's when you could use Ash Blossom. So it felt very situational, which is why I didn't bother putting Ash Blossom in. Yes, of course, it's still good if I go second and Ash Blossom is still that much of a great card, but I feel that Crows and Veilers and Imperms will still be able to get the job done for you. We're then also playing triple Book of Eclipse. Now the reason I quite like this one is because after I've used all of my mandatory negates off of the back of Light and Darkness Dragon, I can activate Book of Eclipse as like a 4th form of interruption, which will flip Light and Darkness Dragon face down, and then during the end phase, it will flip back up with all of its stats reset. So it doesn't lose them permanently, and when it's face down and flip face up, everything gets reset. So that means my Light and Darkness Dragon, yes, of course, will be mandatory back online during the end phase, but that means my opponents had to play through 4 forms of interruption, not to mention whatever else I've got, and then I flip the Light and Darkness back up. I now have a 3400 boss monster that I can then just start attacking with. And even if I don't need to do that, I can hold back Book of Eclipse until my turn, activate Book of Eclipse, flip it face down, and then because this hasn't changed its battle position, or as long as it doesn't change its battle position that turn, so if I have it in defense and it flips face down, I can then flip it face up, and then we're good to go. It's like when you used to get UCT'd and you hadn't summoned that monster that turn. And the last card we play is the Call by the Grave, so pretty standard, try to help you protect against all the hand traps, because, I mean, you could use something like Talents, but like I said, because your Light and Darkness is mandatory, you need to make sure that you're always going to be the odd chain, because you're always going to be chaining, the even chain, because you're always going to be mandatory chaining 2 on your Light and Darkness Dragon. You need to then start being chaining 3s, 4s, 5s and onwards. Moving on to the extra day itself, we are playing 3 Light and Darkness Dragon. I'm just waiting for my 3rd copy to show up, so at the moment I'm only going to be walking about 2, but I should be able to get this. These are the only 2 that I could pick up at sneak peek. So this, like I said, is slightly generic. 1 level 8 one level 8 Dragon Monster and 1 level 8 Dark Dragon Monster, and it must be fusion summoned. So while this face-up card on the field, this card is also a dark attribute, so it's light and dark, but then once per chain, if a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated, quick effect, this card loses exactly 1000 attack and defense, and if it does, you negate the activation. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you get to target a dragon monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So as you can see, it wasn't a you can, it is mandatory, so it will always happen, which is why it will always chain block your opponent's stuff. So for example, if this had already used up all of its negates, and my opponent went Brand Fusion, it would go Chain 1 Brand Fusion, Chain 2 Light and Darkness. So I've basically every single time chain blocked my opponent's Brand Fusion. When on the flip side of that is I already have this face up and it's got no defense and I activate Branded Fusion, I chain block my own Branded Fusion. So I'm always protected from Ash Blossom, which is why people are considering playing this in Branded as well. Then, of course, because you have the ability to fusion any dragon monster you want with your light and dark monsters, I found some other dragon targets that I thought would be pretty funny and pretty cool to play. So one of them is the Borolo Furious Dragon, which requires 2 dark dragon monsters. And this one just gives you the ability to target as a quick effect 1 monster you control and 1 card your opponent controls, and you get to destroy them. You can also banish this card from the graveyard, target a Dark Link monster in your graveyard and special summon it, but it cannot activate its effect this turn, which can be more useful if you do go down more of a Dragon Link option route, because you can start looking at stuff like Striker Dragon and everything else in between, but personally, I'm not using that one. Then, of course, for the other really fun dragon ones I kind of saw, and I was like, oh, these are still dragons. I went with the Trishula Dragon of Ice Imprisonment, or Icy Imprisonment. This requires 3 monsters with different names, and it must first be either fusion summoned using only monsters in your hand and or field as material, or special summoned from the extra deck by banishing the above cards you control. So obviously, because it's generic dragon, you can actually make it with 3 dragons with different names. And if this card was special summoned using only monsters that were originally dragons, you get to reveal and banish 3 cards. 1 from your deck, 1 from the top of your opponent's deck, and 1 from your from their extra deck. So you get to rip 1 from your opponent's deck, top of their deck, you get to rip 1 from their extra deck, which is really, really important. And then you also banish 1 from your deck, which is a bit of a small cost to pay to be able to look at your opponent's extra deck and go, cool, Requiem, get out of here. Like, completely shuts down the combo. Or you go, Heavenly Moon Goddess, get out of here, done. And the last one that I thought would be really kind of cool to play in this is 5-headed dragon. And obviously it would be very specific for you to be able to summon this, but 5 dragon monsters, you're playing an all dragon deck, it should be relatively easy to do so. And then for the synchros that are the level 8s that you can send, I did kind of want to consider to use the original dark dragons. I'm trying to find what they are. Let me see if I've still got the pictures up online. So I think it's like the original Dark End Dragon and the Light End Dragons, but basically they were level 8 synchros. I don't own those, so I decided to go for 2 level 8 darks in the form of Bills, the Diabolical Dragon, and Red Dragon Archfiend. And then I kind of went with their counterparts, being Stardust Spark Dragon. Obviously, this can be Stardust Dragon if you want to. And then Judgment Dragon of the Heavens, just because I thought this was kind of cool to have these as the counterplays. So you get your lights and your darks, depending on which attribute you want to banish. And then we've gone with a very small rank 8 engine of the Dragula Bomb, which would get you into Hope Harbinger or a Numeron Dragon, so you've got your defensive and your aggressive. And the last 2 cards are Hieratic Seals, they're just your generic dragon cards, and they can help you get into a Magnamut, and then obviously the Magnamut will then be able to search you in the end phase, so you'll be able to get quite a lot that you need to, all out the back of the deck. So that's pretty much it. Now, it's a very simple kind of basis of what you want to try and be doing with this deck. Like, straight away, Light and Darkness Dragon will eat up 3 cards from your opponent's hand. All you need to get for that is you need to be opening up 1 Light or 1 Dark Dragon. So you need access to either the Dark End Dragon or the Light End Dragon, and then any other Light or Dark Dragon monster that you've got. Because the idea would be, let's say you've opened up both of these, right? You just go Light End Dragon, banish a level 8 from the extra deck. So let's just banish our Spark Dragon, for example. You'd summon this down, and then you'd use the effect of this to fusion summon with the Dark Dragon in your hand and the one on the board. Put those both to the graveyard, summon out your Light and Darkness Dragon, wham, bam, thank you, man. You've now still got 3 more cards to play with. So the idea would be that they activate their first effect, negate, they activate the second effect, negate, they activate the third effect, negate, and then you start falling back on the 3 cards you've got left in the hand. So Crow, you would obviously set the Imperm if it was an Imperm, you would set the Book of Eclipse if it's a Book of Eclipse, or you just hold on to everything else you need to. Obviously, the idea is that they have to go through this first, but then if at any point they go Chaining 1 one thing, and you go Chaining 2 Light and Darkness Dragon, and they went Chaining 3 another thing, that's when your other hand traps, and that's when your other back row could then come into play, because then this can't mandatorily negate it. It's a very, very specific way of playing the deck, but I did think it was kind of cool. Like, I really enjoyed the Light and Darkness Dragons during Sneak Peek, and then I was able to pick up the Fusion Monster, and I was like, you know what? I don't see many pure versions online. I see a lot of people going, oh, we're playing with Branded, completely fine, do what you need to do. But then I was like, you know what, let's actually see what this deck can do on its pure kind of basis. And it is a very, very fun deck, but it is obviously designed a little bit anime manga-esque rather than anything else. I know it's based off of a manga or based off of the monsters in the manga, but I kind of thought it'd be something a little bit different to kind of trial out and show you guys. And yeah, I just thought it was very easy to make this guy. And it's basically like a level 8 dragon deck. So I thought it was kind of fun. You can make it all Dragon Link if you want to, but again, I wanted to avoid those typical meta ways of playing this deck and kind of make it a, here, all you want to do is get your Light and Darkness Dragon out and then work around with cards that can help you reset this, utilize it, use it as your main deck boss monster or your main boss monster to get everything you need to. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's giving you a bit of an insight in the type of deck that it is. It's definitely enjoyable. I think the Light and Darkness Dragon was currently like £6 at pre-order. You can probably pick these up a little bit cheaper as time goes on. They might go up in price a little bit if they do become like a branded mainstay staple, but I haven't really looked into the branded versions of the deck just as much yet. But you do have a bit of flexibility to do what you need to. If you don't want to play the Bestials, you can play just other generic level 8 Light and Dark Dragons if you want to. But I felt that this was kind of like the nicest balance to still maintain the essence of the Light and Darkness Dragon, and then utilising the hand traps that I specifically selected just allowed you to be in a later chain, because you really don't want to be waiting on 3 Ash Blossoms and then you have to wait for this to use up all of its negates to then use an Ash Blossom, because by the time you've done that, the chances are their search card is not going to be that effective for them. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.